Houston, we've had a problem.
Hello, Steven. How are you?
Good, Joe. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So, I'd like to start out with a little intro. Our guest today is someone who has navigated the world of science, tech, and business with curiosity and clarity. Steven Verboom is a consultant. He's spent his career connecting with deep technical knowledge. He's practical. He's people-focused with the solutions. He's worked in a lot of different engineering roles, chemical engineer to be specific, nanotechnology, semiconductor, a lot of time spent in process improvement. He is a consultant for Kepner-Tregoe, and he brings a lot of different types of analytical thinking and creativity to his work. He's driven by the desire to understand how things work, and most importantly, how we can get it to work better. Steven, welcome to the Knowing Edge.
Wow, Joe. Thanks. It's a flattering introduction you have prepared.
Hey, no problem. No problem. So, tell me about yourself, Steven. Where do you live? What do you like to do?
Wow. Okay. I'm based in the Netherlands. That's the northern part of Europe for those people outside. And within the Netherlands, you can just call it the smack center of the Netherlands. It's a lively city. And I'm just northeast of that. I won't divulge my exact address for whoever would like to come and visit. Let me know. But I'm about in that region right now.
Very good. Very good. So, how long have you been working as a consultant?
I've been working as a consultant for KT for about 3 years right now. And prior to that, like you mentioned in your introduction, I've worked as a chemical engineer / consultant for, I would say, another 4 or 5 years. So I'm about the 8 to 9 year marks right now.
Very good. Very good. So, in the Knowing Edge, we really like to ask questions that get at kind of gut thinking versus structured thinking. And maybe both have a place at certain times. So to kick us off, I want to ask you, is there a time where you went with your gut and it really paid off?
Well, a bit scrambling here. I'll think back to a time. I mean, I'm not sure if it was with KT when this happened, but the first thing that pops to mind, and there might be a better example later, but I'll run with this one for now. I was working at a company that is a semiconductor manufacturer here in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
A semiconductor company. And I was working there in the role of a process engineer where I'm tasked to be responsible for a set of different machines. And now there's loads of different departments, loads of different places.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as things often do in a factory, things break down.
Yeah.
And it means specifically that the factory will stop running.
Yeah.
And now in these escalations, a lot of people come together. They have a lot of different roles and things to do. And I had the privilege at the time, when I was working there for about a year, to join one of these escalation calls. And you should imagine it's like head of factory, senior engineers with 20 plus years experience, facilitators everywhere in the room at the same time, speaking at the same time.
Sure.
And I remember at one point in time, my gut saying, I think they forgot about this valve. And I was just like, wait, am I the only one realizing that they forgot about this valve? I was like a little shy to speak up because everyone was still continuing the conversation. Oh, we have to shut this part of the factory down, clear these people.
Yeah.
And at some point, I'm just like, screw it. I'm sure they forgot about it. So just stood up and just yelled for the first time ever in my experience there. What about this valve? And then everyone just stopped and stared at me. And I'm like, oh my God, I've said the worst thing.
Oh, yeah.
And in the end, they're like, oh, you're right. There is that valve. So they started to pour out all sorts of other decisions, and the pressure had diffused at that point. And they continued on their merry way. But I think it was one of the first times that I made a gut decision in my professional setting that I was quite afraid of doing, but definitely paid out.
Sure, absolutely. So what kind of gave you the courage to make that gut decision? Was it an experience you had or training that you had?
I would say the prospect of wasting more time was where I would say that was a worse scenario. So I would say at that point, it's a little bit of what we talk about with KT about potential problem analysis or thinking about risks that come into play.
Sure.
The risk simply outweighed the consequences at some point where you're like, okay, wait, if we're going to spend another 2 hours going down a road that doesn't make any sense, we're just wasting a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And the worst part is people just say, yeah, we accounted for it. So that drove me over the edge to then speak up and do something about it.
Very good. I like that. So you've got to spend some time in some different industries before you became a consultant. For Kate and KT, of course, as consultants, we get to work with a lot of different interesting people and companies, organizations, and industries. What are some of the more memorable experiences that you've had as a consultant?
Oof. Uh, Plenty for various reasons. I would say one of the most interesting experiences for me, because it's also recent, so I'm slightly biased by that, was
Sure.
my delivery. It was a room of managers, which is a bit different than the typical engineering setting that I
Yeah.
tend to give workshops in.
Sure.
Fully interested in what I was about to tell them, but had in no means, way, or shape expected me to have to make use of whiteboards or space or wall space like we often use with flip charts, for example. They had simply booked a board meeting room and there was no materials there.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, okay, how am I going to break it to them that we can't use this room? And every other room in this building was booked.
Yeah.
So that was quite an interesting and memorable experience. In the end, it worked out. They just dragged a couple of flip charts in there. We just put everything on the glass walls and walls around them.
Sure.
It was a great, we reinvented a war room. I think that was definitely one of them. A couple of other memorable experiences, I would say, we sometimes have the privilege of delivering together here in Europe because things tend to be a little bit closer, especially in the Netherlands.
Sure.
And one of the things that comes to mind is a facilitator workshop that I was running with a colleague of mine. And she and I actually disagreed. And so we had this interesting dance for a moment because in a facilitator workshop, we tend to speak a bit more technically and material deeply about things.
Yeah.
And a participant had asked a wonderful question. And I just started answering, and I just noticed that as I was answering this question, my peer was just getting more and more frustrated. So at some point after I had done my speech, I was like, okay, so clearly there's another person with a different opinion in the room. So let's also hear that. And we beautifully transitioned that into a more of a build relevance discussion rather than really, well, right or wrong, or how do you see it? So that absolutely was another memorable experience. Let's see, can I squeeze out a third one? Probably, yeah, I think that's a nice one as well. It was a client also in the Netherlands still. It was related to their public transport in one of our bigger port cities in Rotterdam. And I remember them starting an application, so they had just learned how to use the theory and were trying to puzzle their way through one of the problems that they were dealing with. And we were in one of their rooms, and at some point I asked a question, like out of curiosity, because I want to technically usually know how do things work and how does this look like.
Yeah.
I asked, so hey, can you tell me what does this part look like that you're having a problem with? And this guy just bolts out of the room to his desk. And he just grabs the thing and he's like shoves it in my face and says, this is what it looks like. And this is what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, thank you. That helps a lot. But then haven't you thought of, and I made a suggestion and it escapes me. And you can just see his face grow pale.
Yes.
And he runs out again, picks up the phone, calls the workshop and says, guys, I want you to test this right now. And ultimately it was the thing that actually was causing their problem. But it was so interesting to experience how words versus a tangible physical thing or an apt visualization and then the external point of view can really combine into something unique.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. You know, that kind of brings up another question that I had. So the framework and tools that we have for Kepner-Tregoe, they're amazing and they're scalable. That's a huge part of it. They're scalable. So I find it to be an interesting thing to do to teach people how to use a tool while at the same time tell them that you don't always need to use all of the tool. How do you navigate that when you're showing people what to do and how to use it?
Oh, great question. Thanks for that. I would say that I found that over my years as an instructor, your narrative for each of your workshops tends to get further and further refined. I think that's the best way of putting it.
Sure.
And starting out, you're really focused on just transmitting the information, making sure that people get the methodology. And a big part of that is realizing you don't need every single step.
Yeah.
However, in the, well, I would say later years of my consultancy, or the more recent ones, I found that making even a step prior to it, helping people articulate their thoughts, structure their thoughts, and then regardless of what process that in is, that actually helping them shape that is an
Yeah.
even more powerful experience. And this is where typically in the introduction of the workshop, I tell them 3 things. The first one is, you're probably not going to learn something new. Some of these things you already know unconsciously. So what I'm going to do is going to make you conscious and aware of the steps that you've been doing.
Sure.
The second one is, I'm going to be very particular about the kind of questions that you're asking. So it's a lot about phrasing, communication.
Yeah.
And last but not least, I'm going to ask you to visualize your thinking. Because something magical happens when you pick up a pen, a marker, or something that allows people to understand what it is that you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 things I tend to deliver on with regards to my workshops. And then I use the methodology as a frame to help people further figure out the how it is that they can structure their thoughts, visualize their thinking, and work with that.
Yeah. That's a great answer. What kind of light bulb moments have you experienced with clients and people over the years?
Well, I mean, I've mentioned one in my stories, or the story of interesting deliveries. I think
Yep.
another one is really in the pursuing of distinctions. I think is
Okay.
usually a very interesting
Yes.
part. So clients tend to get completely overwhelmed with all sorts of information, cutting through the noise with then a simple specification, if it's not, or even just a simple paragraph describing your problem,
Yeah.
can be already a great relief, because people go from 20 pages back to half a page.
Sure.
It's a great compression of that information. But then using that to then continue your line of questioning, what is so special about X, or what is so unique about Y,
Yeah.
really gets people puzzled. And they're like, why are you asking this? And this is where I'm like, well, you see, in all likelihood, something changed. We just don't know what has changed yet. And instead
Yeah.
of going on a roundabout way to list all our possible changes, I want to narrow down on that. And so the realization of how that works, and also seeing it in application, has been a couple of very interesting experiences.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of us have experienced that as consultants. The light bulb moment is definitely fun, because it's stuff that they probably, like you said, sometimes they already know. They know how to do it, but they're making it visible, and that lets a different part of our brain work. So in light of that, a lot of what we do is sort of in the sphere of System 1 and System 2 thinking by Daniel Kahneman, who kind of coined that. So what kind of typical System 1 errors do you see people making when they're really struggling with a problem or a decision, and they are afraid to step out of that System 1 thinking into System 2 thinking?
I think the System 1 error that I most frequently see people make is the belief that they're faster using System 1.
Ah, interesting.
And that's, of course, a illogical one, in the sense that the moment you start drawing it out in time or in a timeline, you immediately realize, oh no, we're wasting so much time chasing cause after cause after cause.
Yeah.
So by far, I think there's loads of different System 1 mistakes
Yeah.
that people make. But the one outlier is the belief that System 1 is faster. I think, statistically speaking, the moment that you've checked more than 3 causes, you could have made a specification. You could have checked a few things. And yes, I do believe that if you happen to have the magic or silver bullet, then yes, you might be faster than a System 2 approach.
Right.
But I do think that people tend to underestimate the amount, or overestimate the fastness of System 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've heard it said multiple times, people don't want to, their job is, say, to cut down trees, and they don't want to sharpen their axe because they have to hurry up and cut down more trees, right?
Yeah, but that also ties a little bit into the firefighting culture, though. So this is where I fully agree with your analogy, in the sense that, yes, you might be faster just cutting down more trees. But for me, it also highly links into well, if you're firefighting, you can't make heads or tails or what your environment is or what your situation is. And that's going to lead you down a wrong path anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you get people to slow down and give structured thinking a chance?
Great question. I would say when people are really in a firefighting mindset or really stuck in their system one, it can be difficult to get them out of it because they're still so fervently clinging to this belief: I'm faster this way. I need to do something. I need to go and just get things done.
Yeah.
Now, being from the Netherlands, I tend to be a little provocative about that, and you can blame our culture about that. And I've talked to clients at times and said, "And well, where did that get you? How did you end up here? I mean, I'm here to help you to do something different."
Yeah.
So that's a headbutting way of going about it. I've talked with participants about how they can sometimes ease other people into it a little bit more if they're a bit more receptive to it. And it has to do with the fact of evaluating their cause. So within problem analysis, we talk about describing our problem, thinking about causes, evaluating our causes, and then going to do something. And I quite aptly paint a picture where I say when people are stuck in their system one, in their firefighting mode, they're doing step 2 and 4 continuously back to back. They're thinking of a cause, they go check it. They think of a cause, they go check it.
Yeah.
So by inviting them to say, but how does that make sense? Inviting them to step number 3 effectively.
Yes.
How do you evaluate it? You can actually trick them into doing step 1 with you, and then you're back into a system 1 or system 2 kind of discussion where you're saying, okay, so you've in the span of 5 minutes listed 5 or 10 different causes. Before we go do any one of them, can you talk to me a bit about why one is more likely than the other? And as a result of that, people will start saying, well, that's because this is more likely to happen with this and this part. Oh, okay, great. Tell me more. And you can start shaping the discussion towards specifying the problem.
Wow, that's really good. I'm gonna have to try that. I like
Sure,
that.
I would welcome you. I talk to it about it a lot with my different workshops, especially with engineers or especially with escalation or problem managers, where they often find themselves at the firing lines and they say, Steven, love the methodology. I just don't have the time, or otherwise I can't convince my peers. And this is one of the tricks I tell them on how to make use of that.
Right. Yes. When you're in the firing line, like you said, it's hard to get people to give it a chance. You know, it's interesting how our brains work with that, and we don't want to slow down because we perceive, that it's not going to help, right? So, since you've been doing this, have you noticed a change at all in people's ability to try this kind of thing or pay attention throughout the years? And what I'm kind of leaning towards is social media, Instagram Reels, YouTube Reels, things that are really making our attention spans shorter and shorter. So have you noticed with clients more of a struggle to get them to slow down their thinking?
Interesting. I think people experience 2 different things. One of them is this immediate gratification of their desires. That's what I relate to with what the social media things you've been mentioning.
Yep.
And whenever they're dealing with a problem or with even a concern, if you want to take it into a more generic point of view, I think their system 1 is exactly the embodiment of that. They want to immediately do something. They want to gratify the gap that they experience between where they would like to be and where they are right now, and then do something about it.
Yeah.
Now, if they are in a position that they can, they will. There's no convincing or changing that I can help them with. But usually by the time that I get involved, or even I have the opportunity to talk with them, they've come to realize that this is one of those things that they can't immediately solve by themselves. So it is not something that they are right now in the position of doing, or otherwise in a case where they might need to convince a peer, a manager, a supervisor, or someone else to enable them to complete it. And as a result, and this is, I think, one of the key tenets that we talk about in our workshops, is it comes back down to communicating your thoughts to someone else. And this is where it becomes almost more of a, all right, if I can't solve it by myself, how do I convince someone else that I'm right and we can get going? And this is where I say, well, that's exactly what I'm going to help you talk about by helping you first structure and visualize your thoughts so that that conversation with someone else is going to be more quick, effective, efficient, whatever word you want to use for it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, in college and school, and probably for everybody, the best way to learn something was when they forced me to explain the problem.
Yeah, for sure.
And then it sticks. Or, I don't know, it opens up your brain in some way, for sure.
No, and this is definitely, I can think back of many different cases where, of course, a professor or someone can demonstrate a proof. I've got a more mathematical background as a chemical engineer. But you figuring out that proof yourself sticks with you so much more. Someone explaining you how a chemical reaction or a physical phenomenon might work, but you having to reason your way through it is so much more interesting, for one, but also leaves such a bigger part in your memory. It really nudges into there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd like to kind of finish up our talk spending a little bit of time on semiconductors, because I know you have quite a bit of experience in that field. So from what you've seen recently, what are some of the interesting things that are coming, changes that have been made, and how the industry has changed?
I would say the interesting part within the semiconductor industry is just its further use of automation. Right?
Okay.
I mean, where in the past, and I had the privilege of working in a factory where they still did things by hand.
Yes.
But the moment you move into bigger fabs like TSMC or things that are happening over there, you can see that a complete factory is automated. Now, what this does to your troubleshooting is kind of interesting. Because on one hand, you would say they're less prone to make mistakes, and that's true. Parts still wear out and things can still go wrong. But at the same time, what I've noticed and what I think is an interesting development is that the reliance on data provided by the machine itself is seen as all of the information that you could have gathered. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is not factually true. If you would have gone to the machine yourself and would have observed things, you might have had a more information-rich picture of your problem. Simple example, we had a machine which was in charge of removing a particular layer in the process of making a chip. However, what fortunately one of my fellow engineers had decided to do was to simply hang a camera within the cabin. Why? Not because the machine's inputs and data representation were incomplete, but just because there were things that were not in the report. And it would be so frequent or so interesting to see that one of the parts would malfunction or not grip something properly, and as a result, the machine would break down. But the only error code the machine would give is no waver was detected in the machine. You're like, wait a second, a waver went in, but there's no waver anymore. Where the hell did that go?
Yeah.
And obviously it burst into parts and we had to clean the machine. But
the
interesting part is what happened in between. And only by observing it yourself and sort of taking a step away from data that is provided by the machinery, can you actually start moving towards solving your problem. So I would say one of the interesting moves that's happening in semiconductor is this move towards automation and doing things less by hand.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely a fan of that, because these things can just run way more continuously and effectively than people can. There is one but, or one, I would say, caveat, and I would say the moment things go wrong, you want to be able to see more than the data that the machine provides.
Wow. That's really good. That is a great point, I think, to end on here. So, Steven, you are the first guest of the Knowing Edge podcast. I don't think we could have had a better guest, to be honest with you. Thank you very much for being on this show, and I look forward to talking with you more and hearing more about the things that you're going to discover as your journey moves forward.
Lovely. Thanks again, Joe, for having me, and I'll look forward to those future conversations and perhaps another episode on the Knowing Edge.
Yes, absolutely. All right. See you later.
Thanks again.
Yep. Bye.